The fifth principle for building your ambition revolves around working with others. You can't be successful by yourself. And with that in mind, let's talk about a few ways to build relationships. Let's start with kindness. How kind should you be? As kind as you possibly can. Who should you be kind to? To everyone you come in contact with. From taxi drivers to hotel clerks to waitresses to store clerks to people on the street and people in your office and people at home. Be kind to everyone. Be generous with your kindness. It'll go a long way. People will remember, whether you know them or not. When you give kindness, it's not gone, it's invested. It'll come back to you 2, 5, 10, 100 times. Kindness, it's so important in every aspect of your life. Now, here's what else is important. Sensitivity. Being touched by the experiences of others. Being sensitive to others. Understanding the plight of others. Opening up your heart and your mind and your attention to address the needs of others. The people you work with, the people you live with. Putting yourself in someone else's shoes. Seeing, if you can, what's going on in their heart. If there's a problem, you've got to be sensitive enough to ask some questions. Not one question, but many questions. Sometimes you won't even get through to the root of the problem until you've gotten 2 or 3 questions deep. Most people won't reveal the problem on the first question, and most of us don't want to come right out and say what the real problem is unless 2 criteria are met. Number 1, we're talking to someone we can trust. And number 2, we're talking to someone who really cares. So sometimes it takes that second question, maybe a third, and maybe a fourth, before trust builds. Learn to ask questions that will build the trust and communication between you and those you work with. Find something you have in common. Find something you can both identify with. Start with where they are before you try taking them where you want them to go. Let me give you a few tips on good communication. Because to be able to get along well with others, to be able to work well with others, to be able to live well with others, you must be a good communicator. Number 1, have something worth saying. Interest, fascination, sensitivity, and knowledge. Number 2, now that you've got something worth saying, say it well. And you've got to be able to translate it so it'll benefit someone. You must have a good delivery system for your substance and knowledge and awareness and understanding and experience. Learn to say it well. And here are some clues on saying it well. Number 1, sincerity. The best communication occurs when both people are sincere, one sincerely wishing to learn or listen, and the other sincerely wishing to share. Number 2 in saying it well is repetition. Part of saying it well is simply practicing to say it well. Practice, practice, practice. If you just talk, you can hold a family together. If you skillfully talk, you can build dreams and the future. Now, here's another part of saying it well. Brevity. Sometimes you don't need too much, just enough. The more you know, the briefer you can be. Because you can learn to make words more effective. Jesus was brief when he was putting his team together. He just wandered around the countryside, and every once in a while he'd see somebody he wanted on his team and said, "You follow me." Now that's short. That's brief. Now, why could Jesus be so brief and yet be so effective? Here's what I think. For all that he was, that he didn't have to say. When you become bigger, when you become wiser, when you become stronger, you become a person of better reputation, so that when you arrive, maybe your reputation has preceded you. And when you get there, you don't have to say much. You don't have to launch into a 2-hour harangue if your reputation has preceded you. Your reputation will get a lot of the job done for you before you ever arrive. Next is style. Part of saying it well is style. Be a student of style, a variety of styles. Then make sure you develop your own. Let someone else influence you, but don't become them. Develop your own style. Here's another tip on saying it well: vocabulary. You've just got to have a good vocabulary to say it well. Vocabulary. We can only translate for other people with the tools called vocabulary. If you're lacking in vocabulary, then you're lacking in tools to describe some problem or some answer. Words, vocabulary. You can't communicate without them. Every time you come across a word that's new to you, what should you do? Look it up. Every time you're in a conversation and the other person uses a word that's new to you, look it up. Now, most of the time you can figure out the meaning of a new word by how it's used. But if you can't, make sure you hold your response until you know for sure. For good communication, number 1 is having something good to say. Number 2 is saying it well. And number 3 is reading your audience. You've got to read what's going on between you and the people you're talking to. Should you say what you're saying a little softer? Should you say it a little stronger? Should you explain it more? Should you be more clear and concise? Should you quit? A lot of the decision-making that's going on during a conversation with someone depends on how well you can read, how well you can tell what's going on in the minds of those you're trying to reach. Doesn't matter if you're looking into the face of a child or the face of a colleague or 1,000 faces in an audience. You've got to read what's going on. You've got to pay attention. So let me give you some ways to read. The first one is you've got to read what you see. You've got to read what you see. Search the face of a child and see if you're coming across. See if they look perplexed. See if they're getting it. See if they can't get it. Body language tells us a lot. Look at how the people you're talking to are sitting, what they are doing with their hands, their eyes. So the first one is read what you see. Here's the second one. Read what you hear. You've got to be a good listener to be a good communicator. Get some feedback. Listen. To be a good parent, you've got to be a good listener. Now, what you hear may help you change gears. Be a little stronger. Be a little softer. Find a different illustration. This one isn't working. Search for another way to say it. Become sensitive to someone else's words, not just by preparing to talk when the other person's through. Listen. Pick up those signals that the feedback of words gives us. Now, here's the third way to read your audience, and that is to read how you feel. Emotional signals. You've got to learn to pick those up. Pick up those feelings. Women just seem to have this part built in. Men can learn it, but women have it. Woman says it doesn't feel right. Learn to read your emotion. Learn to read what others are feeling so you can adjust your communication, so you can adjust your approach, so you can get your message across, so you can communicate well.